Hi there. It's Jen Lee with Red Thread Studio, bringing you our next installment of our feature designer series. Many of you know I'm a big fan of textural elements to be incorporated in our quilts. As a matter of fact, we were going to have Rachel Daisy join us this past April to go through the magic of her fabric folded quilts. During that journey of bringing Rachel here to Florida, which she unfortunately didn't arrive due to COVID, I was fortunate enough to meet another queen of pinecone quilts, actually here in my home state of Florida. Many of you also know the story behind our name, Red Thread Studio. So red thread is an ancient Chinese proverb that says we are destined to meet the people in life and we're connected by a red thread to all of them. And so I am so honored to be able to show you who my red thread has connected me to, is Betty Ford Smith, and she'll be joining us here today to talk about her passion, pinecone quilts. Welcome, Betty.
Good morning. I'm happy to be here.
So happy to have you. Look at that beautiful smile. It makes me smile just seeing your face.
It's very hot here today. It's sunny, bright, and they say it's going to be feeling like 105.
That's Florida in the summertime for sure. So I was mentioning to our viewers that my red threads had led me to you. Now, we haven't met each other in person, but I just feel so blessed and honored to have you here today. Thank you for taking time in your morning to share more about you and your wonderful pinecone quilts.
Oh, thank you.
So why don't we start out by having you tell us a little bit about yourself. Where were you born and raised?
I was born in New Rochelle, New York, and just recently they did something on Rob Petrie and the Mary Tyler Moore show, that kind of stuff. So if anybody remembers that show, New Rochelle has a lot of famous people there. So it's a lot of fun being in New Rochelle, a lot of creative people there. And I was raised there, and then we moved to Mount Vernon, but all of our family was in New Rochelle. So I went to church there and to the YMCA there. And even when I was born in New Rochelle Hospital, I met somebody recently, a little younger than me. She told me she was born there. And I said, are the baby pictures still on the wall? That would be years ago, though. But she laughed. She said, I heard about that. So it was very creative. Like I said, there were a lot of musicians because New Rochelle is only 20 minutes outside of New York City. So you have a lot of people that want to live in the suburbs and they could just jump on the train and be there in 20 minutes. So it worked out fine.
What brought you to Florida?
Well, I'm a teacher. I'm a special education teacher. I taught for 38 years, actually. And I was living in upstate New York for a while teaching. And the snow was just terrible. One day I ran off the road just in a ditch. The snow was probably 4 or 5 feet high. They had to come get me out of the snow ditch. And I went home, and it was in October. I remember going home. And I wrote a letter immediately to St. Thomas, to the U.S. Virgin Islands, and said, I want to move. So those days, that was in the 70s. They said, fine, come on down. So I moved to St. Thomas first. I loved the weather. It was beautiful. But then I came back home to help my mom because her father got sick and she needed some help. But after a few more years, just a few more years in New York, I said, it's still too cold. I'm going to move to Florida. When I moved to Florida, it was great. As a teacher, I went to their district office in Miami and said, okay, I want to teach here. And they said, all right, but we're going to send you all the way to Homestead, Florida. And if you can survive in Homestead, then you can stay a teacher in Florida. And that's what happened.
Wow.
So I finished my 38 years of education just 7 years ago.
Amazing. So when did you learn to sew and to quilt?
Well, that's interesting because I went to the YMCA when I was a child, and we did a lot of hand stitching. There were a lot of scissors with the plastic and basket weaving. So when I got home, my mother saw that I was very interested in making things with my hands. She said, it's time to teach you to sew. But she taught me to sew by hand also. She would not let me use a sewing machine until I was 16. So I had to make a dress and a skirt and a blouse all by hand, all with just a needle and
Oh,
thread.
wow.
Yes. So that got me sewing, though. I really enjoyed it. And I've always loved hand sewing the most for some reason.
Excellent. So obviously you're very passionate about the pine cone quilts. I've read in some articles, and in particular one coming out of France, so ladies you know there call you the queen of pine cone quilts. What
Yes.
sparked your passion for pine cone quilts, and why do you want to share it with others?
Well, what happened? One day I was doing a fair around the circle here in Highlands County, and I had my dolls out there and my African art that I'm also passionate about, and some Haitian art. And a friend of mine got out of her car and said, I found some quilts that you're not going to believe, because she knew I was sewing. And when she took them out, I said, I've never seen anything like that. Where is this woman? And she told me she was just around the corner from me. I couldn't believe it. I passed this big yellow house with artificial flowers out front every day going to work and never stopped. So finally I said, please take me and introduce me. And she said, no, I'm not going to introduce you yet because you'll keep her all to yourself. So I was like, no, I want to learn how to make this. So I came home, I looked it up, and I could not, that was in 2004. And from now, 2004 up till today, there's so much stuff out there, but there was absolutely nothing. I think there was one book, A Piece of My Heart, and that was the only picture I could even find of, and it was called Pinecone. But Miss Sue called it a Cuckleburrow quilt, and her name was Miss Sue Arlene Dennis. She was 92 years old when I met her, and finally she warmed up to me because I said, I really want to learn how to do this. I love to hand sew. I'd go to her house every day, sit by her fireplace. Can you imagine sitting by a working fireplace with fire in it in Florida in the summertime? There I was. I'd come home every day with a headache. And my husband said, what's the matter? I said, she had the fireplace going and all that smoke and stuff. I think it gets in your head, and I come home with this stuffed up head cold. But I was sitting on the floor learning how to sew. So that's how I learned. And then she passed away at 98 years old, and she was still making these heavy quilts. And I thought, well, if she can do this, and it's lasted, she started making them when she was about 50 something. So if she could do it, then I could do it. And that's what, then passing it on, I wanted to do more research and history. And because I was doing a lot of history, people started writing me, asking me questions about it too. Then I wrote to people in North Carolina, to it's Lumbee, the Lumbee Native American tribe, that they make what's called the pinecone quilt. And they even have one in the museum there. And I haven't gone to visit them yet, but I've written to them. I've spoken to people on the telephone, and I have a lot of pictures. So eventually I'd like to put all that research together and show people, because it's almost a secret. It's a well-kept secret. And I've been teaching it now at the college for a few years, not this past year though, because of the virus, and the people that I've taught, they can all make small squares, something like this, or something a little larger like this, but they're all very heavy. They're all very heavy. So a full-size quilt can weigh anywhere from 17 to 30 pounds.
Oh my goodness.
And for an older woman to be lugging around a 17-pound, 20-pound quilt, I was really impressed. And the way she could get up and down off the floor. Then she taught me how to go outside, and you need to get fresh air from time to time, walk around, do some gardening. So just keeping in shape. So I'm trying to pass that on. And it's also something that's really helping us when you're sitting in the house and you think you have nothing to do. You can do that. You can just pick up your needle and thread and sew.
Absolutely. So how long does it take you to make a pine cone quilt? Let's say lap size or something of that nature.
Okay, I can make, say a 40 by 40. I can make that in about 6 weeks. complete. And that's taken my time.
Mm-hmm.
But usually my full-size quilts that I make can fit a full-size or king-size bed. That takes 3 to 5 months to actually finish the whole thing.
Mm-hmm. My goodness.
And then when you do the binding, yes, like yesterday I was working on a quilt and just going around it, I measured it this morning, I'm up to 54 inches in diameter. And going around that whole circle took me 2 hours because some fabrics are harder than others too. But what I was going to say, the people that I've taught, they can make nice little squares. They love making the little pieces. But no one has completed a full-size quilt yet, just doing that. And I tried the other style where you make lots of little squares and put them all together. I don't like starting over and over and over again unless I want to put something in a, show you, unless I want to put something in a frame. See that? Then that's nice. But other than that, I just really enjoy working on that large fabric, starting with a sheet and going round and round and round.
And round. Yeah. I would imagine the motion, the repetitiveness to some degree is relaxing and soothing almost.
Yes. And also you get in the rhythm and you don't want to stop. So wind up sitting for 5, 6, 7 hours sometimes. I was sitting up to 10 hours a day and the doctor told me that's not good for me now. So I can't do that. I have to get up and walk around more. But I can tell looking at my work though, when I stopped, because my rhythm the next day might be different or 2 days later when I pick it up. I can see my pattern design, my tension and my stitches, everything's different. So that's why sometimes I just like to try to work and finish a color. I might be doing a certain color for that row. And I'll say, okay, I have to get this done. Plus, my husband and I, we watch a lot of television and he likes to sit next to me. Well, I'm sitting next to him actually while he's watching TV, but he likes for me to be in the same room a lot of times and men love that. So I can sew and he can talk to me at the same time. So that's a good way to pass time too. Because before when I used the sewing machine, I would be in another room and we're hollering back and forth all day. Yeah.
And do you have an idea in advance how large your pieces will be? Is that dictated by the size of your large piece of fabric, or do you take just a large piece of fabric and then work out until you feel that the design is completed?
Let me see. No, say this. I don't know if you can see the color. This is a blue piece and the stitching on the back. So I take a sheet and I have one here. Oops, let's see if I can. Okay. And I feel it. And I really want it to be soft and used. And Miss Sue used to take me to the store with her to the thrift stops and we'd look for soft used sheets. Okay. Usually a solid color. And if she couldn't find those, she'd rip a few and sew them together. So your basis is a nice sheet because that needle that has to go through here is 3 inches long. And it's tough to go through all that fabric. So yes, that determines if I find a really nice sheet, that's going to determine what size the quilt's going to be.
Wow, interesting.
And then
again, because these quilts are so heavy and they have a three-dimensional aspect to them, is there any special care you need to take to keep them clean?
I try to refold them every 4 or 5 months. That's hard because I usually need help. And I keep them in these large blue hefty bags. They're very large satchels. They're extra large. So that keeps the dust off of them. But the other thing is, most of the time, the elderly people didn't wash their quilts. You put them on the bed, shake them out, take it outside, put it on the lawn, and you just beat the dust out of it. But if you have a cat or a dog that's going to get all over this particular quilt, I wouldn't advise to let your cat or dog get all over it because they love to scratch at these little points here and the thread on the back too, because there's no backing on this either. So they like to play with that. But if you have to wash it, say you spill something on it, you have to put them in the bathtub usually. And you put something another sheet in the bathtub, just kind of lift it up and down. But it would be so heavy that it would probably take 3, maybe 4 people to get rinse all, drain the water out of it, to roll
Mm-hmm.
the water out of it, and then you have to take it outside and let it dry. Now I spilled something on one time, and I'll just spot clean it.
Okay.
Like I got something on the back of the sheet once,
Mm-hmm.
and I just maybe had to clean 12 and just let that dry. But to wash the whole thing, I used to ask her. Miss Sue used to keep them in plastic bags in an outside storage shed, and they never got ruined with all this warm weather or anything. So we take them out, shake the dust off. A few bugs would get in them outside like that. Shake them off, and she sold them right from the shed.
Fabulous. She sounds like just a delight, a wonderful, kind soul that anybody would have been honored to have met and be so lucky as you to have spent so much time with her.
Yes, yes. 6 years. She also made her own clothes. So all of her dresses were handmade dresses. But she'd go again to the thrift store and buy a dress, maybe 2 or 3 dresses, take them apart, and then reassemble them. So you would see this design pattern crazy. And I thought it was really something, but then I found some African tribes do the same thing. So it was it wasn't as unique as I thought, but it would be unique for here.
Sure. Now, do you have a favorite quilt that you have made? And what makes it your favorite one?
Yes, I have a black and white quilt. I'm sorry I couldn't pull it out, but if you go on my website, you can see it. And my husband picked out all the colors for that. So it's black, white, with little splashes of red in it. And then we received about $22 bills when we got married 30 years ago. And I folded them into this quilt. So as you're folding the squares to sew down, I scattered some $2 bills throughout and said that this was our quilt. So that we'll always keep it, because he went. There are not a lot of men that will go to the fabric store with you, first of all, but he wanted to go to the store and pick out all the fabric. So then he found out how expensive fabric really is. So we started at a lower end and then moved up and when we got to the more expensive, those were the fabrics he really liked the best.
He's a keeper.
We did take that. Yes, 30 years now. Oh my goodness. We did take that quilt to the National Quilt Museum in Paducah, Kentucky, and everyone really liked that also. So
fabulous.
It was a favorite.
Yes, you have had several of your quilts hung in museums and other places to display, correct?
Yes, yes. It's very exciting too. We've done it in Tallahassee at the State Museum up there. And then when I went to Paducah, and then the ladies in France treated me like a queen. I just couldn't believe it. And I didn't carry any quilts with me. I just took these smaller samples like I'm showing you. But I had sent Cattell, who does Quilt Us Forever. She has a blog. I had sent her a piece that was about 36 by 36. And she carried it with her everywhere she went so she could show the ladies what a pine cone quilt actually looked like. And so she had that one there. And then I took some books and pictures for them to see also.
Fabulous. So I know during this time, during COVID, a lot of other quilters, customers of ours, and in our community have been focusing on trying to knock out some of their UFOs because we've been, virtually stuck at home looking for stuff to do. And so we started a challenge in April. It was a 30-day challenge, and it was so fun just to help motivate everybody, inspire everybody to finish their UFOs. And what I came to realize is that most quilters have a substantial number of quilts sitting in a pile to be finished. So I guess my other question for you is, do you have a lot of UFOs, or are you very good at starting a quilt and moving it through to finish it before you start another?
I would say right now, I really only have one that I need to finish. I did one recently that I finished in 30 days. I challenged myself. But this one I started probably 3 years ago. And I
Okay.
took black and white photos of our family from years and years ago. And I was doing an ancestral quilt with the black and white photos. I saw it at a museum that the ladies had taken a class in how to do this. So I printed them all out on the printer, got them all sewed down, did the patchwork squares for them. And I haven't finished it. I haven't quilted it. So a friend was after me the other day and said, "You really need to finish that quilt." I said, "I know. But now this other quilt, when I get a commission, I have to work on that first, of course. And that takes away. And I can't do two at the same time. I'm so focused that I just have to work on the one. And then I recently bought probably 50 just quilt tops, just a patch. They were beautiful, colorful. Somebody had a container full, and they're at least the size, a twin size bed, each one. So I bought them all. I only had to spend $1 or $2 each for each top. So I can quilt now for the rest of my life. I'm not looking for it anymore. So that would be my UFO, a complete container of quilt tops. Yeah,
there you go.
That I'll get to. Plus, I love to make dolls also. So I make handmade dolls as well. And I also like to make memory jugs. I collect a lot of art, so I realize as I get older now each year that my husband said I need to stop collecting and start cataloging some of this stuff and get it together. Because I always thought I'd have a museum, but I've run out of time now. And now that I'm not at school showing kids different pieces anymore, you know, I miss that, having to show my collection here and there to students at school because the pieces got so heavy I couldn't constantly lift all the stuff any longer. So now it's all around the house. I photographed it all, and now I need to catalog it and put it in a book.
That sounds like a wonderful idea. So now that when you're not sewing, I should say, when you're not making your pine cone quilts or your dolls, what do you do? What do you do in your non-sewing time?
Oh, I have so many books around this house. My books go completely up the staircase. They're in the hallway. They're all over the house, the dining room, the living room. So I like to read. I love to read. And I can't seem to stop buying books. And though you always hear people say paper books, books that you can literally hold in your hand, are going to go out of fashion, there's some of us that just like books. So I have all these picture books, and the quilt books started piling up after 2004. I really went crazy buying quilt books. So I'm looking at all kinds of different designs, different styles, things that I say, oh, I might want to try that someday. Reading about how people organize their house, because I'm always telling people that creative people sometimes keep a messy house, or we call it organized confusion, maybe.
Yes.
But I know where everything is at. But there's a lot of stuff in this house. And I just need to kind of straighten it up a little bit so I can have company again someday.
So obviously, COVID has been tough. A lot of families were personally impacted, either with loved ones getting very sick or passing away. But for the majority of Americans, I think, we were challenged with being stuck at home. But I always feel like I'm a person with the glass half full. I try to be optimistic, and I can certainly say I've had some silver linings that came out of the quarantine. Has COVID left you with any silver linings?
Well, I think so. My birthday was March 27th.
Oh.
And a very good friend of mine, her birthday was March 29th. So I wound up making that Frida Kahlo quilt for her, because when I was in France, one of the women that was a famous quilter there had made one. She'd made a patchwork quilt with Frida, and it reminded me how much my friend loved that. So 2 years have passed since I saw that quilt. I had to go and look at my pictures again to get an idea of how to do this. But because the virus was on, I couldn't get all the fabrics I needed. I couldn't go to the fabric stores, were closed. So I had to order pieces online to get some of the fabric. And I spent quite a bit of time just doing that. And then once I finished it, we couldn't celebrate my birthday. We couldn't celebrate her birthday. My husband retired recently. We couldn't celebrate his retirement, or his birthday that was in June. So all of this, the sewing has really helped to get through that. I went to my friend's house though to present her the quilt because I didn't want to wait till the virus is over when we didn't know when it would ever end. And we met on the front lawn and we presented it on the grass in the front lawn. She loved it and she took it in the house and put it on her bed immediately. And her cat got on it right away. But yes.
Excellent, excellent. Well,
so it's the virus really that
yeah,
helping me get through the sewing.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for taking time with me again this morning. I really enjoyed chatting with you. And, you know, I'm sure we'll never go back to normal. We're going to have a normal, but I want to find a way when we get to that point to bring you over here to Stuart, Florida, and share you and your wisdom with our local quilters here. But they get a glimpse of who you are and what you do here in our little video series. And would also encourage people, if you want to see some photos of Betty's fabulous quilts, go to www.pineconequilts.com. And there she has some amazing pictures of the pine cone quilts she's done over the years. She has some photos of dear Miss Sue. And here's one she's holding now, beautiful. And so you'll get a real flavor for what Betty does, and you can appreciate the time and the love and the patience that go into making these wonderful, wonderful pieces. So thank you again, Betty, and we hope to see you in person soon.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it. This was a great time.
Thanks so much. Take care.
Bye.